wonderful. I'm coming down immediately to see Mr. Ellis. What's going on here? And anyway, so this guy came down. He was the head of the institute, and he warmly greeted me, and he showed me around the whole of the institute, and we went around all of the basement underneath where all of the artifacts were kept. And it transpired as we were going around the basement that he thought I was someone else entirely. He thought I was an American professor. So I got a free tour of the institute, which was very nice. And he was very embarrassed afterwards because he got the wrong person.
Oh my God.
But then the story continues, because I went to see the sarcophagus, which was in the Louvre. So I flew to Paris and went to have a look at it. And of course, it wasn't there. So I saw the curator, and I said, "Where's this sarcophagus, this very famous sarcophagus?" And she said, "There is no such thing. We don't have it." And I said, "Well, yes, you do." No, we don't have it. So I had to go home again. And this was in the pre-internet era. So anyway, I had to go I went to the library, and the library was able to contact the British Library and go through all of the newspapers, because I knew that they had it. And we found a Times of London article which had this sarcophagus being delivered to the Louvre. And, this article was from 1880 or something. This is going back a long way. It was discovered by de Soucy, I think, was the archaeologist, French archaeologist. So we had the photo of it being delivered to the Louvre. So I sent it off to the Louvre and said, "You do have it. Can I see it?" And a couple of months later, they said, "Oh, we've found it. It was mislabeled." So there's some big warehouse somewhere, sort of Indiana Jones warehouse full of all of these packing cases, and they found the sarcophagus. So I went off to the Louvre again to see it, and it wasn't there. So I saw this. I saw this woman again. I managed to dig her out of her office. I said, "Where's it gone?" And they said, "Oh, we've sent it to Israel." So they sent it to the Jerusalem museum because they had some celebration going on. I forget what it was.
Right.
So it didn't come back for another 6 months. So it took me about 9 months to actually go and see this sarcophagus. And what I didn't find was the gold artifacts, because when it was found, the original Times article said that there were gold artifacts that were found in the sarcophagus. They have gone missing. And that's a bit of a shame, because they might have shed some light onto, the owner of the sarcophagus.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. Yeah. I've still not discovered those. So,
was she a redhead?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, well, you mean Helena? Yes, she was. Queen Helena was a redhead.
Thought so.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, they were all ginger. All of these the Edessans. I call them the ginger monarchy.
Yeah.
And your interest in that, Michael, just has to do with the bloodline.
Did you have any other debates with Eisenman?
Not so much with Eisenman. I've had more with
many reasons.
Robert Price.
Bloodline. Yeah, it's an identifier, certainly.
Yeah, the red theme goes all the way through it, and we're pretty sure, as we can be, that they were redheads because of the Huqoq mosaic. Have we discussed that? I think we did discuss Huqoq, I think.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Very, very briefly then, because we've discussed it before. So if anyone is wondering, there's obviously another video out there. It was a mosaic that was discovered probably about 10 years ago now, and it had this king giving a sacrificial calf to the high priests of Jerusalem. And it was misidentified by the archaeologist as being Alexander the Great. But there was no way in the world it could be Alexander the Great, because this king had a curly side lock of hair, a payot. Alexander the Great was not Alexander the Great Jew. He would not have worn a Jewish payot, and he never gave a sacrificial calf to the high priest, and his army was never defeated, because the mosaic below this one shows that his army was defeated, of course. So that plainly was not Alexander. The reason she identified this character as Alexander, I believe, is that she sold this story to National Geographic, and National Geographic wanted a good splash headline on the story saying "Mosaic of Alexander the Great found in Judea." That's the headline they wanted, and that's what they sold it, because National Geographic bought it and held the rights to it for 2 years before it was released. So I couldn't get any images of this for 2 years. And I think that was the reason why they put this name to it. But it wasn't Alexander the Great, it was Bar Kamsa. And Bar Kamsa, according to the Talmud, was the leader of the Jewish revolt. So we're back to the same era again. And the thing about this was that the leader of the Jewish revolt, we know from Josephus, was the Edessan Adiabeni monarchy. So we've linked this character on the mosaic back to Edessa and the Edessan monarchy. The thing is that the mosaic shows him with bright ginger hair. So yes, the Edessan monarchy most definitely was ginger. This is why I call them the ginger monarchy. Therefore, in my books, of course, I link Jesus back into this monarchy. Jesus would have been ginger as well. He would have been one of the ginger monarchs. And so would John the Baptist, because he was of the same family. So would Saul. They would have all been part of the ginger monarchy.
But this professor was from the University of Essex, is that right?
Oh no, she was American. What was her name? I shall remember it in a minute. Let me just. So Jody Magnus, Professor Jody Magnus, and she was from a East Coast American university. But the whole team, it's obviously not one person. She was just the leader of that particular dig. There's a whole team there, including, I think, about 4 or 5 American academics and a team of Israelis as well, and also Israeli, as it were, theologians, not just archaeologists. So there's a whole team of people there, and between this team of people, they came up with this idea that it was Alexander the Great. And yet, when I wrote to them, I got the impression that none of them knew the story of Bar Kamsa from the Talmud. But I'd already investigated this as a part of my Jesus King of Edessa book. So I knew the story, and I thought the story was relatively famous in Judaic terms. If you're a Judaic scholar, you ought to know the famous scene where the king of Edessa, Adiabeni, presents the calf, the sacrificial calf from Emperor Nero to the Jerusalem high priesthood, hoping that it will be rejected, because they wanted to start a battle with Rome. So this is a pivotal event within Judaic history. This was the event that started the Jewish revolt. and the Exodus, therefore, the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem, and the exile of all the Jews in AD 70 from Jerusalem.
So you do not dispute the actual dates of the revolt or the destruction of the temple?
No, I go with the standard date of AD 70. Yeah. The only difference is I'm putting Jesus into that date.
Yeah. That's why these other people will never accept some of your theories, no matter what, even if you write to them or debate about it.
But it makes sense because the Romans, when they wrote this story, the Romans wanted as we said at the beginning of this, they wanted a new form of religion, which is Rome friendly. I call it sort of simple Judaism, or Judaism for Gentiles, which was the religion created by Saul, of course. Saul was the apostle to the Gentiles. So we know that this religion existed. And all we're saying is that Rome promoted it because it was handy to Rome, because they wanted to squash Messianic Judaism, the Judaism that had started the Jewish revolt, because of course Rome didn't want any more revolts. And so what they wanted was a Rome-friendly form of Judaism, and they got it courtesy of Saul, who is Josephus Flavius, and therefore they wanted to promote this instead. And the only problem being, of course, the leader of this revolt was King Esus Manu of Edessa, who was a warrior king who was trying to defeat Rome. And so they had to turn him a little bit and turn him into a pacifist. But apart from that, the story remains the same. But going back to the mosaic, this was a pivotal event in Judaic history. I would have thought every Judaic archaeologist, historian, theologian should know the story of Bar Kamsa and his sacrificial calf. But apparently they didn't. When I wrote to them, nobody seemed to understand what I was talking about. That this mosaic was Bar Kamsa. Who? What? Very strange. And what did Jody Magnus say? She says, well, lots of people can have different ideas, but that doesn't mean they are right.
But they're always right, yeah.
Right. But it's Alexander the Great, honest.
Yeah. God knows how much she got for selling that story.
Well, I do wonder, actually, how much was it worth to them to keep
and
the
not
dig
just
going?
To them, it could get picked up. It could even take on more traction than National Geographic. They're hoping that would be a start, but God knows who else will pick up on it.
You could then go for the documentary and the film and everything else.
That's what I was thinking, because there's so many lies.
But it's archaeology for sale, She must have known that it was not Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was never defeated in Judea. It was a nonsense claim from the very start.
Have you ever heard of the Jewish author Chaim Maccabee?
Yes.
Yeah. He wrote a very good book that I'd read just before I came across your work. I knew about you from Jesus, Last of the Pharaohs, but I hadn't kept up with the Jesus of Edessa yet. And just prior to that, I'd been into Maccabee, who, of course, is very down on Paul. And he wrote one of the best books exposing everything you know about Paul, called Mythmaker. And he doesn't get the dates right. Very few people do, right? He's still thinking it's back in the 30s. And he certainly doesn't get that Paul, Saul, and Josephus are the same. But other than that, he gets everything bang on. By going into the Acts, by going into epistles, going into Galatians and then the Gospels, to show you just how antithetical Paul was to the Nazarenes, and how slippery he was. He goes into all of that.
Oh, yes, very much so. And then, of course, the problem that Saul doesn't mention the crucifixion in the epistles. There is no, story of the crucifixion and all of the events.
Right.
Which, if it had happened in the AD 30s, say AD 30 or whatever, and Saul was on his missionary tours in the AD 50s, he would have been lamenting that story all across the Mediterranean. These wicked Romans, they crucified our Lord, etc., and all of the events, the crucifixion, the carrying the cross, the scourging, the